I gotta say, my friends, of all the devices that have been made in history, the fact that the Chinese had a repeating crossbow for not just a couple dozen, but literally hundreds of years before you had gunpowder is absolutely fascinating. The Chinook, as it was called, had a gravity-fed box magazine that you could have a dozen or so bolts in, and then over the course of anywhere between 15 to 20 seconds, you could get off anywhere between 7 to 10 shots, which for a crossbow is incredibly fast. However, while this sounds absolutely amazing, the downside of the crossbow is that every single shot that you fired, though it was fast, was significantly weaker than what you would get from a regular crossbow or from a bow. This is actually a really big distinction, because every time you see this crossbow depicted in movies or books or games or other things like that, it's typically seen as a weapon of war, when in reality, this is something that was pretty much only really useful as a defensive tool, both in the sense of during a siege and simultaneously for home defense. The range of these things was only about 70 meters, which is very short. However, if you have an enemy that is laying siege to a castle and then they break in through the gate or they try to storm one part of it, you could have just a couple dozen men firing this crossbow on repeat and have the same effective power at short range that you would from potentially hundreds of missile units at the same point. This is also why the weapon was a very popular tool for home defense, especially for women over the course of Chinese history. But hey, if you want to travel with me and learn more history, you should join me on my trip to either Thailand or Greece, which is coming up here. Information in my link tree.